Hello, Species Value Nature System YouTuber Anthony Wall here, aka Romulus, aka Romulus Wall. YouTube.com/user/Romulus Wall. They had Anthony Wall was taken for that. Now, I was gonna say shout out to Anthony Wall, the golfer from um, Ireland. But I don't know who invented shout out. I believe it's 93.7 hot 93.7 shout out to hot 93.7. So America and world, Fox News, MSNBC, and CNN. Your sources are lying to you, including your worse than lying. And because lies are used as truth and truths are used for lies, since founding relative to things like discorrelation with the course of black pupils and whites of eyes, which has been tactically, which all that we have been presented formally and informally has remained tactically ulterior from this, which it so longs to stay as the focus of our science/s, unabridged. So the Constitution was founded abridged. And so that has not been explained properly to everyone. The sciences, the experts of the sciences have been using knowledge to get over on correlation nature. This is one of the reasons. After the only part we have to know up to, if you want to deal with the science of the reading and logic, honestly, with the Old Testament, for example, that is not having been properly addressed because it speaks about how the people would come from the sciences. The sciences share an identity, which is differentially in demonstration to us. It is showing us too how the various natures of overt/insidious natures of criminal insidiousness. Like, for example, since colonization, there were private criminal enterprises, hundreds of nations shared here and there, individually grouped together, sick, fake. Those laws were made to keep here and there used remotely. Everyone trying to counter the real cause of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, demonstrating worse than that, but demonstrating it through that. So through the names of people that are leaving that out, the breaching method. A breaching method had been sustained against Native Americans A through Z. It had been sustained against the colonists since before they were a part of that narrative that we have not addressed properly because it was criminally foreign influenced. They left out the overtly/insidiously being and having been self-valued, sick database relationships that were a part of that breaching method. So, for example, witch trials. To understand what witch trials are about, for example, you have to ask yourself, what were they about, even if they were made up? Because we know to an extent they were made up. But we have not been taught to think like this. Because there were, since before founding, there were simultaneously criminally foreign influence, fact, human nature, qualities, aspects, natures, and identities, juxtaposed with tactically self-value physical delusions that the psychiatrists and the psychologists had with the branches of government too. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a police former, I'm not a criminal. But there are means to delineate their, their lies, their uses of truth for lies, juxtaposed, how they've been getting away with it, how they've been influenced to it as victim predators, as hyper victim predators too, as hyper predators. while through defenses of everyone's logic, treatments of net positive negative identity, sequence value, that to come. You know, everyone left out. Nature uses this system of why and how everything can work or not. What's really going to cause positive or negative value nature progressions? Acts and natures. But its system makes a distinction between criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments distinctly from anyone or any computer or anything. It uses exceptions, the exception nature, in a way that can't be invented because it's the way that is hypergenerative. There is only the extent of it is debatable. Something generated everything, and more of its value is being generated. Only the extent of it is debatable. But see, we have the extent of things that are not debatable gotten away with being debatable because we have, excuse me, criminally foreign influenced and simultaneously delusions wrought. A, therefore, B. And roles with the uses of people from the youngest grades, people that didn't even have communications with each other. For example, there are people that from the youngest grade, they try to make instances to make it look like I knew them on campus and ever since, like with a Ray Reynolds. And then connected the whole bunch of people that have connections between each other. Only time I know them is when they sought me out knowing me from other people. See, they have each age of fact-cheating nature used remotely, criminally foreign influence, delusions raw. And I'm not doing, they pretend that I'm calling them names when they know this is true to an extent. See, but former director of the FBI and his co-defendants, various natures of federal criminals from various natures of cases, some of them as his co-defendants, in a 2006 district court case in Connecticut. Those people and people tied to them leading up to the World Trade Center attack in Manhattan and interstates as people intercities who have been planting evidences with various natures of courts and police forms other too. Weathersfield police chief from years ago, at least one of them, and a police chief Centron. And so they have more other police, they have people with the state police, they have all kinds of direct and indirect ties to a Whiting forensic and other forensics locations with the intelligence community. There's people on, there's a guy who pretended to know me yelling things out on Pondside too. See, these people are pretending like they don't, these people are with the cops switching and forging names. So that's why they're pretending they want privacy. Why they put themselves in other people's business as fake fraud punks then. Interbranch, forging, switching names, preventing me writing since I was a kid. They have a straight line of rat traps since I was a kid. One time, too, a Ray Claw asked me to hold his cup. They involved with something with the intelligence community with Newington and with the people with the Main Street or Weathersfield. Fake ties, fake natures of the ties to other kids. Everyone forced to speak to other people. And that because they're planting evidences as people with criminally foreign influence with the branches and with areas of overt criminal enterprises and private ones, originally still differentially criminally foreign influence, but increasingly for a method that is and has most furthered the overt criminal enterprises. So we have to be able to counter how strangers are involved with from off campuses with other strangers from other classes, not even our class, and know how their classes. Oh, do you mean the class because you're in the classroom? You have a student, your kids are in your class, you have the same teacher, or do you mean the class you're in the same grade? See, these are things already that people from Central Connecticut State University, people from UConn, people from Trinity College, they're involved with some military police families, and they're involved with ones, with the former director of the band. And these are ones with other countries. They have people with Afghanistan and with Korea involved with houses next to the schools. And I forgot the name of the street off of Wells Road. Now these are adults that have their kids involved needing to hide their life progressions. And they're making up things. They attach me to fake conversations, fake ties, and fake natures of ties to themselves since I was a kid. Interbranch families, because before the World Trade Center attack, they affected confessions to me because of this, and because of their roles with names that were in collusion with the kids that were connected from the schools I went behind my back. These are where the interactions, the instances that are being recorded are criminally being brought before courts, because the courts have been using things to offensively hide lies, to offensively, criminally do things through influences for their kids' roles with the spots on and off campuses, and with these crime methods yelling things out. So there are people on Pondside, for example, I have nothing to do with. These are FBI people, state police families, and Wethersfield police families, and intercities playing games in backgrounds. With the Wethersfield police with wire crimes. Now there's a Mayor Gold, also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with evidences crimes, federal rules of evidences crimes, and child abuses on each side of my house. And the fire departments and people that work for the phone companies and with forensic locations are involved with his family, and with a principal child abuser I caught with worse then and now. But other people too were involved with it. Now there's a Spada family too that Delaferro family sought me out to make confessions. Other boyfriends of them involved with the name Colo, that the Wethersfield police recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with their officers. That they use all kind of ways. They send here with fake things and come to your house, and then they put fake things. They forge and switch names, a way of making threat. They've been hiding this from federal judges, with other natures of federal judges for their roles with Afghanistan families, and with Korean families, and with people from Italy, and with people from other countries. People from Russia are involved with the fire department, and with the wire communications and the different police forms. They have locked in place people that aren't going to deal with the finite. They're not going to care about it. They say, "Oh, let the courts deal with it." They're at the locations. See, that was preemptively used remotely by a breaching method since before they were a fake identity, pretending it was liberated. They measure and maintain distinctly from our own, who measure and maintain themselves, pretending to be against George Washington with slavery as their means, fake. Because George Washington wanted us to explain how if they found out their roles, who was really behind getting the people to put the Declaration in those words like that, to tell us to get the Constitution unabridged, to get Marbury versus Madison won, and to have no real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice. If you can't be real justice, you weren't already, you have to pretend you're some kind of a theater politic. And with the LL lyrics too, which is brought up by this. In other words, I didn't put the oath part in the song. In other words, I don't know what there were things. There are people from medical community that attached me to fake words. In other words, on television all the time. They have various natures of courts and their family members, and the former director of the FBI involved with Washington, D.C., interstates. He's also had federal criminal co-defendants from federal criminals from other cases. They didn't been before they were caught for that stuff, like pension thefts and stuff like that, cramp downs of money and stuff like that. All other stuff mixed, different natures of stuff. Those same people have been telling lies and just pretending it was part because of readings of statutes that give people the right to lie about other people when they're doing elections for unions, for example. People associated with those people were planting evidences on off campuses with other countries, timed manipulations of the sense and sensibilities of sociologists, of psychologists, of teachers, of principals, of deans, and per uses of everyone's kids. You have investigations, investigators, and vetting identities, apparently, and demonstrably. Criminally foreign influence and simultaneously delusions raw. So there's a Mr. Rapuzzi that is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by kids before and after. The only one time he came up to me and demonstrated this is true. He's involved with people that were involved with demonstrating they knew, but only to an extent, that and how their families were criminally foreign influenced. And cannot afford an honest nature who's going to put honestly about where America's not free and where it is free simultaneously. It's not going to pretend America did the damages to the Native Americans, even when it was through the name of America. It's because it was still a slave, individually grouped in together, intellectually. You don't even have our founding parents defend it. You had offensively abridged sciences. Oh, but this is how you can make money. Our founders left us to explain how they were forced to entertain natures of industry that could not be defended and simultaneously be the nature necessary to counter properly the real causes for negative value nature progressions acts and natures at all locations, areas, and states. And this is regarding identities of criminal insidiousness, like wrongdoing on a mass scale. Not just, even after colonization, roles with those logic that had been sustained, not just against Native Americans, against everyone, sickly distinctly. So the value of understanding and preserving and not pseudo-preserving, examining the preservation of Native American rights and history and what's preventing it. That's how you think. That's honesty, but that has not spoken for you. So when you hear about people pretending they care about democracy, see, increasingly people are self-valuing crazy groupthink, crazy groups, violence, protests with same screen of how there's really no right to assembly. Otherwise people wouldn't have been able to, counterforce observation of collusions from off campuses, from off all locations, with all instances, through what I caught them doing. And so consciously, they have each age of act treating nature, formally, informally. We have to understand differentially, criminally foreign influence, and how increasingly by what used and uses effectively those fake differences in collusion, criminal insidiousness natures of identities of the law, and overt criminal enterprises, and private ones, and styles of logic A through Z that blamed on other things, others, or selves. What the proper answer was, which was the breaching method. That order to those crazy laws, including witch trials involved, even if it was made up. And because they, for example, demonstrate how other things, others, or selves were blamed rather than allowing to be discerned that which was manifest, which was everyone forced to defend. Criminal insidious natures of positive treatments and negative treatments where they were syntactically manifest, and how and where we are syntactically manifest now. They also pretend we are attacking them because their roles, they've been getting away with it, the private, like, for example, WFSB and CNN will record, confess, demonstrate, confirm that, they're told to pretend people attack others. So as part of their roles to cover up sequence shifts, as rules to cover, there are people who answer phones. See, where you have this method, sickly, distinctly fitting collusions consciously with uses of criminally foreign influence, positive treatments and negative treatments, simultaneously fit to collusions as natures of identity theft, fraud stuff. So former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, my town's police chief, a whole bunch of people tied to him, and the people that answer the phones for him and for others through time. They have roles with child offenders, criminally foreign influence and delusions, wrought uses of town offices, uses of sense and sensibilities, use Jane Austen's phrase, towards our representative, our relationship with other countries involved with the campuses. They brought up with this too, per the attack narrative. These are sources of the military, of CNN, and of local news too, that are also criminally foreign influence, also per uses of locations next to them through time. In the landscape of jobs and titles, in the mind of speculation or whatever they call it, because it's not natural, but as criminal insidiousness, positive negative treatments, identity treatments. So they have a whole bunch of people with Hartford courts and with New Britain courts that will record, confess, demonstrate, confirm to me and to others. They were involved with forcing people to federal rules of evidence as crimes, and to child abuse as roles, and other natures of evidence crimes, natures of identity theft, frauds, slanders that were also legal oriented, because they were being used remotely, criminally foreign influence, investigators identify the ground locations themselves, and for example, deans of colleges. See, this is what happens when this is the FBI former director, former standing chairperson on Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organization Act, Robert Luskin, and his lawyer, Robert Chevrolet, and his other co-defendants, same lawyer, with Thaddeus Grabowski, John LeConte, and Dominic Lepriata. Now, Dominic Lepriata also has neighbors involved, intercampuses, and with houses on Two Route Highway, for example. And a whole bunch of people who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, tied to on all the state judicial branch offices, and with the Dillon family. with wire crimes, drug crimes with kids, sexually natured, falsified police reports, wire crimes relative to that, officers forging and switching names. These are also names associated with forensic locations in prisons and people on off the state prison offices, houses next to it, on off of the state judicial branch offices, houses next to it, involved as the names they stacked up. They also pretend, oh, all these people are saying this and against them. And they're changing what people say, preventing people from using short words and, and, and to defend ourselves. They recorded offensively, sickly, distinctly preventing people from calmly defending themselves, and they are sickly, distinctly preventing them from aggressively defending themselves. They're preventing us from speaking softly, gently, gracefully, and they are preventing us from speaking aggressively by attaching us to fake words, by attaching us to fake behavior, by having had and having themselves and their kids doing that roles of identity theft frauds behind our backs since we were kids. They make fake exceptions. If there's one if they do one thing standard constantly, increasingly, they do the opposite too. And now it's easy to discern when you follow it from the base of what was going on, when you look at what is simultaneous, even if made up, for example, too, because they also already used it. So we have more policing of the schools, and we have agencies and police firms from off the campuses that are influence over the leaderships of the schools of all nature, individually grouped in together, that they don't have the sense and sensibilities to deal with short words properly. So forging names and switching names, attaching little kids and their families to fake words with themselves and others through lifetimes is recorded. So there's a former Mayor Gold, who's also one of the ones recorded, confessed, and demonstrated and confirmed involved with the planting evidence or federal rules of evidences crimes anyway, and names involved with it on the sides of my houses, on the sides of my house through time too. Now, 2 times I had a cooking class. Both times there were people planted in that class in Wethersfield who are involved with federal crimes with evidences that have something to do with, in other words, they have shared ties to Elm Street in Rocky Hill and to Elm Street in Old Wethersfield and to the on-off parts of the state judicial branch offices part /S. And timing where I was going to go and be through time. And where they force people and trick people to hurt people to speak through others, or they attach you to fake words. And if you don't say anything and let them, they do the same thing. You have people interbranch who can't put anything in the paper. They've been forging and switching names so you can't properly sue them. They pretend, you have to sue for your rights. Say that on paper then. Get on one name in sequence. I asked for someone to respond since before the World Trade Center attack. It is not by accident. They can have all these people on the networks with advertisements for mental health and for therapists. There are judges recorded involved with wire crimes with their families at locations, with federal crimes with other countries too, though. Different how they are kept victim predators and hyper predators. This method knew that the stewards of all locations, areas, and states would have to counter things like criminal insidious natures, wrongdoers, such relative positive negative treatment syntactically manifest styles of logic. So, in other words, incapable of defending themselves and of affording discern that which our founders actually left to have discerned and to have defended, not to have used by a breaching method to measure and maintain through further motivations, needs, interests other than its own till, that when they say, oh, George Washington owned slaves, oh, what's your research, etc. In other words, we have means simultaneously, sequential, finite, active, progressive, and as identity's complete means. That is conjunction to that which is only increased as value, as volume, and where and how it is valued to itself. Hyper-concentrated here as earth, where it is positive unto itself at all parts of space/existence, but then further distinctly here, concentrated at earth, where consciousness can be demonstrated to, of what causes positive value nature progression acts in nature's here, or forces it from here, leaves of ideas. And it shows how there can be temporary exceptions, but in other words, but there can be criminal insidious natures of positive, though. They could only be. So they made means to cause positive value nature progressions that were criminal insidious natures of positive treatments after they had already tactically denatured the ground, the waters, their conjunctions to themselves. That is the subject of that is what it is going to cause. Positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures. Even the most beautiful homes now, lawn, chop away, take it away. The soil has no more, not just because it has no humus, oh, it's a sponge, it keeps the water in the ground. The worms need it. The other things you need with the worms drop off, smaller things. Vaccines. Too long, our one species has been criminally foreign influence. And differentially, we have to understand this phrase. Differentially criminally foreign influence. I never read that. I read criminally foreign influence is a phrase formally that people use. But differentially criminally foreign influence is what everyone was relative to the breaching method /S. Because it was undiscerned. And because it made arrays of identities, therefore identity the grounds, quality of as a value / value progression as criminal insidious natures of logic, of value treatments. Now this is where value to the identity of space / existence as that which is actually hyper simultaneously recorded, high. And I'm referring to it as the hyper simultaneous because being an individual is being a simultaneous nature, being a sequence / simultaneous nature. Simultaneously, another way, while being a sequence or simultaneous / sequence nature, relative to, for example, right to left and left to right. The way it answers our questions individually grouped and together. But to speak about nature honestly in any of its sciences, there, for example, this requires a quality of fact, human nature that we have been offensively forbid. And by those capable of discerning where and how being smart and being wise is actually manifest. See, right now, where and how it is manifest, computers mimic how we discern, which is relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. See, everything was assigned additional values, ulterior from how the hyper-simultaneous assigned that which is actually going to bring evolution's fruits and gifts. It means out of nowhere, especially regarding where and how we are. Quality as fact should be nature and syntactically manifest. Hyperlinguistics is more than real, while it is the real, and while it is the value of sequence true. Before this, before the out order of the real now. Note how truths can be used for lies, let alone a bunch of them at once. So at instances, things are being brought before the branches of government that are responding to instances that are incapable of responding to them properly because of what I caught them doing and exploiting, which is the breaching method, but it simultaneously is individually grouped in together. All differences of people A through Z. And this is relative, I put out there a number of times. In other words, did they change things? I said things about the World Trade Center online that they know are true. So that instead they attach me to fake words about the World Trade Center with themselves, Connecticut reporters. So then increasingly their family members, their neighbors. I couldn't believe in the past when I heard about how you wouldn't be able to tell on child predators. Everyone was pretending you're making things up about them. Or two, they make things up about people. The courts themselves, they are recorded how with child offenders and with other, even with killers, people associated with the world, with the witness protection program too, on off the body dumping spot, like a Firenze family, on off the body dumping spot of Billy Grasso, involved also with people on off the state judicial branch office with his cousin too. And women associated with the interbranch community too, as people criminally foreign influence. Also with the journalism community and the police forms on off the campuses and off the buildings next to the state capitol. Now these are adults that when they're kids they're little rats because they want to be called a rat because they're making things up. They're making truths as lies and just making things up. Slandering people, and they do this with their. This is a perfected method, the breaching method. A bunch of fake integrity natures relative to our evidences, as that which is hyper evidential, as that which we want to speak. Anyone who wants to speak honestly for New York City, anytime we see a picture of it or think of it, for example, that people stacking. That is evidence of the left self-cultivated breaching method, worse than, but while it was colonization's breaching method, it had propagated itself here. Use of the nature demonstrating the real cause of negative value, nature progressions, acts of nature, for example, tactically denatured the ground. Pretend blame on other things others and while pretending call people hunter-gatherers. They demonstrably cultivated. This is good. This is how it goes. Okay, make it around. See, now everything's through that system /S. as the breaching method singulars its system. Same way a computer works. Its memory, its order onto that. What changes? As the increasing identity of volume, as its identity of relationship to itself. No longer Earth's a special difference positive unto itself. So we even have this self-value, so we self-value going to space. Leith of Hadith is more probably having been revealed by the ancients as force space nature transfer. Nature being its identity of relationship to itself. And this is where we only have an extent of itself to discern its whole self, the hyper-simultaneous. That which we know exists, that which really causes positive value nature, progressions, acts, and natures, evolutions, fruits, and gifts. That which is also the system that is inseparable from the ground, but it's not filtered. It's all right to have to want green lawns and stuff like that, but you know, not honest with yourself and others. If you say you don't care about the worms, you know, the worms have no food. It's been too many years we've been taking the lawns away. Even if you don't take the lawn away, in other words, it's tactically denatured. We have to get things for the worms to eat. We have to make a nature, the identity of the ground's identity of relationship to itself. They take away, there's forest fires, so we're going to take away all the debris. They're making everything dead. They're making everything dry up faster. Once it holds the moisture from going in, mulch. Which that's mulch, the trees dropping their leaves, not just to fertilize themselves, to feed the earth. The parts of your body aren't just trying to nourish themselves. They're trying to keep making more of that which it uses. All plurality make more of that which is one singular as the species body individual, as the individual. All exceptions, exception nature, are in demonstration of the same thing. So no groups can't control what others of the group are going to say for themselves. You know, then they have to debate. You know, in other words, we haven't heard anything, any nature of debate that wasn't a criminal insidiousness nature of positive treatment. Where and how they are also overtly / insidiously negative acceptation of what debate is as value, for example. So I'm not a journalist, I'm not a police force, I'm not a criminal. They've been using people with Hartford Hospital and with other medical locations. So they have roles with the systems. They say they don't like to give away their means and methods. They do this every time they make things up. Every time they use real instances and made, to cover up what's actually recorded. So differentially criminally foreign influence, not just because it's increasingly is important to understand, because it's how, for example, the kids of overt criminal enterprises, of private ones, and of that insidiousness of people A through Z. Oh, it's politics. Blame other things other than yourselves. The real causes of things like slavery, like witch trials, like people stacking in New York City pretended legitimate, pretended not evidence, /S. It's an increasing amount of evidences. So you have to understand, since before our founding parents were even born, America's, the suburbs were tactically denatured. They had sustained this against the colonists. They had just perfected it against the colonists, against the Native Americans. They made the Native Americans fight with the Native Americans. They separated people from means to cause positive value nature progressions, unless they were going to do it syntactically, having to be manifest uses of, entertainment of, at least criminal system nature of positive treatments and collusion with the overt negative. And as the identity, wherever you have positive or negative treatment, you have an identity treatment. Each part of a computer has a name, each piece of any invention. So people are trying to make what they know. They're using it to get over on the value of that which is true always, not denying the slightest exception, and simultaneously using how other natures of exception really demonstrate the same thing, which, in other words, it gives us a trinity to work with. Each part of itself is positive, or it is a criminal insidiousness, nature, or positive. And it is relative to and as an identity of relationship to itself that the actually hyper-simultaneously recorded has. That is negative. And so it is demonstrating now this. Because we have roles with that negative self-value, because these are systems that have only been known tactically ulterior from nature's system that's really going to cause positive value for its system. So when you hear about these things, they go, oh, this is politics. The MSNBC, Fox News, and CNN, they have political leanings and or, positionings where each side is supposed to have a side, I guess, or whatever it is. But they're making positive and negative treatments that are offensively preventing mandated law and preventing hyper-mandated law simultaneously. Part of the way they've been getting away with this is by telling us to our faces they want the police to shoot us. And tell us shut up simultaneously. And simultaneously the pretending other. So they prevent you from using short words when you want to say, look, this person said this, brought up to school. I want to tell on this. Because these are people trying to tell on me since I was a kid, trying to make it look like they knew me. They take a picture of you walking by someone, then they pretend they know you. This is relative to where and to how the overt criminal enterprises, the private ones, and C's A through Z, and the three branches individually grouped and together, they are kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts together, the same finite, active, and progressive lies, identity, theft, frauds, roles, natures, uses of themselves. It was proven after the World Trade Center attack in the Ninth Circuit Court in Manhattan, New York, right next to the World Trade Center towers, right before they were taken out with all those lives. And the ones over across the globe, the species body, how it bled. And it has bled since. See, we have people that want to jump in. Oh, they did this towards maneuvers, but they don't give a nothing. Oh, I'm against this policy because we did this, and we got out of Afghanistan wrong, or we did it. But then when it comes down to where and how Afghanistan, they've been here the whole time with us, and we've been there the whole time with them. Where and how we have police forms that use the right to lie, where they don't have the right to lie. Where and how they have been rolled together, planting things on and off campuses, as federal rules of evidence as crimes, as natures of identity theft, fraud, slanders roles that breaching method set up. That's one of the things it is overtly, where it is non-distinctly sickly against us each commonly. It is against us simultaneously, sickly, distinctly, effectively to keep us from discerning how sickly, non-distinctly, because then it has no power at all, because then it has no might, because then we would have might and our power applied simultaneously, power, might, and that longing, where prayer is a simultaneous value as a relative to a contemplation, because it's not abstracted to faiths, especially faiths that are still offensively themselves tools to prevent anyone from even bringing up the value of sequence true. What it says right in the beginning of the Old Testament, all you have to understand is right up to this point right here. And the people of the sciences are going to come together. It's because the sciences share an identity. When you bring up slavery, you bring up the sciences, they have that identity, they have distinct identities of relationship to itself, demonstrating that slavery is a science that is criminal insidiousness nature. It is unnatural. It is only natural as criminal insidiousness, rather, as that which is an identity of grounds, identity of relationship to itself, that is caused to lethal IDs, force space nature transfer, where how Earth's a special difference, where what is positive unto all parts of itself already can make more of itself that is also positive unto itself. Where and how it can no longer do that because we are no longer its system positive to itself. It forces our value from here, lethal ID, only because we are one species. It has taken so long for our criminal insidiousness nature of value progression to have, endangered and killed off even species, things that cannot be invented. No. So I read on YouTube a Native American chief, I believe it was a chief. I cannot find the video title. He said that Native Americans believe we should read each other's dreams. We have to read each other's dreams, especially in a breaching method. So, in other words, we have to underuse these phrases like criminal insidiousness, prepare. And so, in other words, we have to give a means where they're pretending passions and emotions against each other. And because from off their locations, their sources, how they've been using them, since they were kids, they've been using everybody through a method that has people take part at locations with instances where they're going to bring things before courts and or before police forms and or before political branches, private, and people A through Z. They're going to bring people towards corners of streets, and it's going to be relevant. Parks. They go through programs. Cub Scouts. Cub Scouts is recorded involved tool. Even since after their role with child abusers. They have roles further being used and haven't been effectively used with locations next to the state judicial branch offices. With names involved, then and now further with the principal child abusers campus. With their uses of their own kids in my name from backgrounds, because if they did it on paper, they would be humiliated. They try to put fake exceptions on paper. They put fake. They have the news speak fake things. So these are CNN's, Fox News' sources too. When I was a grammar school in Wethersfield, when I was a kid, there was people that were already there were already corruption at Central Connecticut State University that had been recorded, confessed because they affected confessions and statements or statements from people, from little kids, when people come around corners, where they lock people that don't even know each other and people that know each other into fake natures of relationships, fake instances roles. So they have employed, they had employed styles of logic, styles of positive and negative treatment, styles of value treatments, identity treatments, off the records, relative to that which was being sustained. Specifically to have humanity have to tell about it. While specifically too, simultaneously, they're doing it through, now they have sick industries. Sick thing, through other filters. Now they have a whole bunch of styles, identities associated with that. Value treatments, identity, time treatments, the value of that achievements. Can't defend themselves and afford proper defenses of or counters to, let alone overcoming of the real causes of negative value nature, progressions, acts, natures, acts like predicate acts, natures like criminal licentious natures, wrongdoing itself. See, this is nature's course. So, people A through Z of America, how many people wanted to be able to say, look, this was unnatural? And then someone would say, oh, if it was unnatural, why would it be? People have needs to say that because of their family members' roles too with the schools while they are students in them. That's another thing that was exploited and is exploited. So they're offensively maintaining the wrong nature of teachers because they're keeping the actual human nature abridged, and everyone forced, tricked, or persuaded to speak through other people, things. And one of the ways they get away with it is, that's why everyone's saying that. They can't put the instances from the past up honestly too. If they have identity like kid stuff, because it would show what was actually recorded there. These are people that have been measuring where people are going to go since we're the youngest ages. And they're using that to use truths for lies and make lies, because they've been using intercampuses connections that they then used as collusions with the World Trade Center attack through their own roles with predicate acts that also involved uses of people from Saudi Arabia as the people that investigated it too. So now they can't defend ourselves syntactically where and how we need to have a peaceful means to counter war. So we have legal natures. We have people that deal with complex litigation, war crime statutes. But see, originally and still, that breaching method was sophistication before they were. So we have to be a hyper sophistication and use that which is hyper evidentially recorded. In other words, New York City is proof that no honest nature of law spoke for the law and with passions at the same time, therefore speaking dishonestly about passions and emotions, therefore self-valuing roles with this on a mass scale against everyone sickly distinctly too. That's how sickly non-distinctly has been, has failed the discernment of those who are the only ones allowed to speak unaccosted. Even the ones who were allowed to speak. In other words, free speech. So They also use wire crime acts and methods that change, that make things up about why and how you called in the past. In other words, fix the fake news for WFSB, and someone will respond for Mazzucato Bakery because of and the corn people with the corn there, because there's a Mazzucato family. Recorded, in other words, they try to pretend they knew me, make an exception. I don't know if they took a picture or what. And this John Mayer, he's involved with sequence shifts. People that know my name that I don't know their names, and further people on the child sex offender registry who involves him with them with wire crimes, and he involved them other way with sequence shifts in intercities, on off gyms, boxing gyms, and things like that behind people's backs. A little sneak. See, everyone's a fake punk, A through Z. So you have to call them names. They want you to call them names. They set it up like that. That's why they're forging and switching names, refusing to put things on paper. This is why and how they demonstrate such things, like the connections between. And there's a Mark Violet and a Mike Violet, and they have others in their family involved also with a Crystal Street or a Crystal and Weathersfield and one in Rocky Hill. As people also involved criminally with the Elm Street in Rocky Hill and the Elm Street in Weathersfield that are also involved criminally on off the state judicial branch offices, interstates with state police and with some military families and with O'Brien families, people involved with the buildings next to the state capitol, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders with them. And these are names that were brought up, like with these Mendez people, involved with wire crimes, falsified police reports with child offenders, and the police forms with the schools involved with it. And so Luigi Guerrero, I never had a conversation with his sister in my life. Also, people with the Weathersfield Police Department involved her with federal crimes, with teachers on Central Connecticut State University, and her family, people associated with her family, like a John Allen and his brothers. I never met Marco in my life, and I barely know Alex 2 times. He tried to make exceptions and pretend to know me. And one time he asked to borrow something through John Mayano, ski pants. And John Mayano also one time asked to borrow a tennis racket. It has something to do with the people at the corner of Town Line Drive and Southstein Highway, and with it Danielle Perone and Tom Perone and their parents and their neighbors associated with FBI and with the former Mayor Gold, with other kids involved with federal rules of evidences crimes and federal crimes when I was in second, third grade, etc. With people these are people also involved with other people's schools they didn't even go to. I went before that. They connected those people. Also has roles with the names and the narratives behind them. Recorded, confessed, demonstrated, and confirmed in the background with the Weathersfield police. Again, with other police forms with them, coaching them to cover up because they have roles through time. There's a Joshua Stryker, and there are a whole bunch of people on off Trinity College too, leading up to a 2006 district court case. And since I was a kid, they've been planting evidences. There's also an Aiello family involved with the former Mayor Gold's family and a former Mayor Gold with people from my grammar school. I think he went to different grammar school too. He's involved with identity theft, fraud, attached me to fake exceptions paid, pretending to know me. Also with Jennifer Kennepicky and his sister, in other words. And they have her sister's boyfriend out of a fire department next to the Trinity College is also one of the ones with federal criminal co-defendants of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. They're also involved with a case that was ongoing at the time of my father's death. That's one of the reasons they got involved with predicate acts against me and others, and criminally involvements with courts that one of them that offered to house the deposition to allow my father, who was doing it as a pro se litigant, to house against former director of the FBI. Most pro se litigants, this was a labor dispute Most idiots would be from inside prisons, which they don't even allow people to have writing in prison. They'll look at your writing anyway and mess you up. These are people with the prisons that were crimes with their patients and criminals since before they got caught. One of the prisons involved criminally is in Sandy Hook, Newtown. Now, these are various natures of courts and police forms criminally involved with them, and lawyers who have also been fabricating audio and video, pretending those old narratives, oh, it's side A or B, leaving out the Trinity. There's more here. So, correlation. So, people, YouTubers, it's important to hear this video, respond to this video, have someone respond. Get me the name who disbelieves so that I could have the name of the interbranch. Because when I went there, they switched, forged names. These are crime predators from my town, intercities involved with the courts. I caught at locations with federal crimes. And I wasn't under arrest or anything like that. People from those courts and stuff like that, they affected them to make confessions to me, ask me for help. If they're measuring what my response is going to be, they lied about what my nature of response was. They also involved the family members of the deans and principals. And these are people intercities through time who did this. Has a whole bunch of ways tied to Newington police families and West Hartford too, with the ones in Wethersfield who have been making like fake ties, pretending to know me, make fake exceptions. In other words. And so get me the name of the people using my name, and I'm Ponce. I don't know the person's name. There's someone with a white car. Make sure, you don't keep fake punks pretending, oh, I'm FBI or what, or Wethersfield Police. And let's get the DMV, because these are people also involved with the journalists personally, keeping them criminally foreign influence too. With the Tom Perone and people on, he's recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with journalists. In other words, I don't even know him. That's how I know about this kid. He's communicating more than he realizes when he pretended to know me offensively with others. A whole bunch of people tied to the corner of Town Line Drive and Southstein Highway through different businesses who had that business in the neck, the ones around it, that corner and other parts of it are people involved in other intercities, locations, and corners. I caught what they're doing, also how they've been using the park. Whole bunch of people with the Wethersfield Park. I don't know at all. They tried to pretend other by making fake exceptions there and to hiding how they know them in that context. In other words, a whole bunch of ties to the former Mayor Gold, criminally with that too, with kids. I don't know the gentleman that lived near him, associated with Eric Jensen. He made all these confessions about her years before that. And, I never told him about anything about my girlfriend. Well, I was with him for a year, right before I met him. In other words, they put him in my class. And I met him through my neighbor. In other words, these are people that were planting evidences, telling lies behind my back to my girlfriend when I was a little kid. In other words, they're playing games. They're using truths for lies, and they're doing political things because they have criminality too, with places in East Hartford associated with the courts, intercities. These are people with the houses next to the state judicial branch offices, with businesses next to it, like Wethersfield Pizza. There's a Stephen Stocko who sought me out to pretend to know me. I never had any interaction with him in the math class when we were in kids. He has something to do with people at Central Connecticut State University, involved with people from Wethersfield schools with federal crimes, with evidence of wire crimes with them, and people on off town to Two-Rod Highway, where it runs into Hang Dog Lane and the Berlin Turnpike, and the conjunctions to those places. In other words. So, Spada family, please respond for your coward boyfriends too, with their family members Everyone pretended to know me with you guys, and with this Ray Claw and these people there's a David Smith and a Jamie Smith and their mother, and they got a guy that looks maybe he's a relative of theirs, but he's one of the ones associated with a Dr. Dingleberry and or a Dr. Dewberry and the Yagman family with some drugs and medicines crimes on my street and threats with guns. And as the people that answered the phones for the Wethersfield police through time, they have roles with Afghanistan and those other countries with the Wethersfield town offices, and people and their roles with the spots on off with the Wethersfield town, where the Wethersfield police moved to now. All along Church Street has something to do with it. And they have the Wethersfield parks, and they have the people involved with the programs with the kids and the elderly. They have the elderly uses of the elderly homes sick. They're locking the elderly in elderly homes and keeping business as usual running smooth because of a sick method here. You watch, because I caught those same one names involved with that, and with federal crimes with evidences on my street, on and off my street, intercities. They timed it as people involved with working at the elderly home and with the policing of them and with the courts associated with me. I have sick courts, people with the probate courts involved with drugs and medicines crimes, because they're supposed to be the people countering it. They're using databases no one's looking into, attach people to fake uses of drugs, fake ties to themselves, fake ties to their family members, because they've been putting fake things on off databases. So there's a Jamie Carone, and there are others recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, were involved in background with investigators when they were growing up, attaching people they never had conversations to, all except they pretend to know them. In other words, these are people on off Central Connecticut State University who were recorded having been influenced to be in the classes with me, criminally foreign influenced. They put a Ray Colo in a class with me, my neighbor. They put him in a class with me to use him criminally foreign influenced in other classes behind my back, in fucking legal cases, with the courts now forging and switching names, with the names involved with the World Trade Center. There's a Joe DeMar with the Wethersfield police, made all these confessions about a Heather Hansen and Christopher Cullen. Christopher Cullen is a stranger 2 times, went out of his way to pretend to know me. He walked by me in a cafeteria 1 time too. I never had a class with him, never saw him around. His friends pretended to know me too. They locked themselves. They confess, record, confirm collusions real fast in middle school with people that were doing it in grammar school, criminally foreign influenced, executive branch, and judicial branch families. I only know, and the political branch families, I found out I was all 3. But they're over there planting evidences, putting fake as roles, timing their own motivations, nature, needs, interests, juxtaposed with the victim only capable, the victims are only capable of reacting wrong, professionals. That's how they got the principle into it. There's also a guy with the name who brought up a Bean. I don't know if he was talking about the guy, because that's the name. There's a guy named Bean. Principal Bean was the name of the principal child abuser. I caught also with wire crimes with the Wethersfield police, forging and switching names, fabricating emails, also with WTNH, and with child offenders. There are more sexual and medical child offenders involved. The Leahy family is also one of the ones recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved, spreading fake things on Facebook, on YouTube, people associated with them. They have their kid they have people involved with upskirt natures of kids as one of the things that they were doing with their patients and criminals. The people from Hartford Hospital, a whole family over there working with it, a Leahy family. They have a whole bunch of family members that I had nothing to do with any of them. Never had a class with any of them. These are people involved with a crime method that makes people use people's names when they walk around a corner. Somebody you don't even know is going to say it's your name, so you can't use it. And they collude with the people that said things to you. They have people describe their instances roles with the instances of other people, or they don't say anything because they know everyone's fake too. This is where and how everyone stays fake, even though it's so obvious that someone's fake if they're going to try to pretend it's even normal, or that they can't fathom that there's means to like that overcome all kinds of difficulties on the people of New York City, only capable of being, if you look honestly at science, and let alone with passions and emotions. So they've been preventing soft, peaceful speech, and they've been preventing aggressive speech. Now these are Weathersfield police in collusion with gun threats, with people enter cities, coordinated with them on off my street. And as police families with the Weathersfield police, retired and standing, associated with the ones in my area, I know the names of them now. Also, they're pretending I'm speaking about other people. You brought this up. You all brought this up. So get them. Judge Napolitano, please, because they've been using your person through their use of everyone's Facebook page. You're relying upon their treatments. The database information is sickly fake. And I don't appreciate having to be used people's names. They have this former Mayor Gold further as one of the ones involved. Then you have to. People have kids. Like I don't want to hurt someone with a kid, like a principal. Not they're playing games though. So then, but they'll hurt you. Well, why you want to hurt them then? Because they want to talk about, they want to leave themselves out. They have the roles with these instances on my street since I was a kid. They've been planting evidences, including fact sheet, nature-oriented little magic trick, punk tricks, like they're forging and switching names, cops. Get them on paper. Let's go. I tried to return to speak peacefully to counter violence because I could have done it violent. I had a bunch of fights boxing. I could have punched someone and try to solve my problems that way. Because little fake tough guys interbranch with the cliques, men and women, the cliques that use my name with interbranch. A whole bunch of people from the Britain Superior Court involved with the houses on off 2 Route Highway where it runs into Hangdog Lane, and the Brown Turnpike involved with this former Mayor Gold. All kinds of people with his family, and that extends that. Then they criminally pretend just because a whole bunch of people are saying things, it means something, because they know that it doesn't, because they attach me to fake words. For example, the news knows that, but they're pretending other. This also brings up their other wire crime methods and acts with the phones, with their telephones. So everyone forced to speak through other people too. Then more and more people add fake things. There's a D. Simone family has also been coaching little kids to federal crimes so they could use their roles with executive police forms and with private ones as the people criminally foreign influence on my street involved with sexual, medical, and drugs crimes with the kids uses the right to lie where they don't have the right to lie. A Brit brought up the name D. Simone. Now Brit is one of the guys at Hartford Hospital involved with the judges and prosecutors with drugs and medicines crimes with houses in my area, and with sexual crime roles and roles with body dumping spots in the witness protection program, also involved with the families criminally involved with the former Mayor Gold and other mayors and their family members. See, they kept little sick fake punks. They're keeping the classrooms divided like this too. You're keeping little fake men and women of integrity, fake integrity, getting away with it too because they've been how long this is. So you're painting yourself in corners too with these punks yelling things out, pretending to because this is how they bring things before courts and before police forms that are going to add to fake stuff in databases already. Federal rules of evidence is crime. It has to do with how they were used remotely, criminally foreign influenced delusions wrought since founding. Our founders left us to defend themselves. not like the punks, called defenses of our founders. They're stealing their identities while they're pretending to other. Get them on paper now, gather around. Make sure I get a response from the Wethersfield schools right now before the school starts. Make sure I still didn't get a response. Now, so also they have the corners of the streets involved on you know, there was also a Phil Collola, who's one of the ones by a Bob Chase. And people on LinkedIn are also involved with people from Yukon with this, with the families involved with drugs and medicines crimes. They have roles with the medical locations, with the databases are being used by military police families and our agencies and courts that have been sticking fake things in there so they could keep using intercampuses, sick fakes. No, get them on paper. When I get them on paper, someone give me a response. I'll show you how to defend freedom.